Welcome, everyone, to Frank Analysis. I'm your host, Franco, and I think I'll be preaching to the choir here when I tell you about how the Republicans are being so archaic by denying climate change and ignoring it and not bringing it up in the conversation about policies. They just had the convention and they completely did not bring it up. We're dealing with a climate crisis right now. There's hurricanes and other natural disasters that are increasing in frequency, and they're just choosing to ignore it. This is bad and it's horrifying. However, the Democrats, they're just as bad because they acknowledge that climate change is happening, but then they continue to serve the industries that contribute to climate change. Not only that, but the environmental destruction of our planet by serving industries that contribute to deforestation and chemicals that get thrown out as waste and destroy the ecosystems. So the Democrats are just as bad. It's not enough to just acknowledge climate change. Like, they have to take action and tackle the root cause to all of this, and that is that they have to stop serving these industries that are contributing to environmental destruction and climate change. Now, the good news is that awareness and acceptance of climate change has increased among Americans. A major reason for that is that we are starting to experience it firsthand. Sadly, that's how our consciousness works. We don't acknowledge a problem until it happens to us directly in our faces. For example, many of us don't care about the military and the police cracking down on protesters in other countries, in which the U.S. takes part in. But when it happens to us here on our turf, and we see it firsthand, and we see like video footage of people that we follow, getting cracked down by police, or taking videos of people getting cracked down by police, that's when we start caring. That's when we start to feel afraid. But when it's happening in Palestine, and the Israel helps Israel to, and the U.S. helps Israel to crack down on Palestinian protesters, or when we're intervening in Latin American and Middle Eastern countries with our military and violently hurting protesters there, we don't really care that much. We don't even really hear about it. And it's the same thing with climate change. When the effects are felt in other countries, Americans don't care that much. But when it starts to happen to us directly here at our home, then we start to care. So what are some of the ways that climate change has affected America directly? I mean, there's been increases in the frequency of natural disasters. I mean, we're having hurricanes more often now. We're having wildfires that are happening in California and in other parts of the country. And, we're breaking the record every year. And also every year we've been among the world's hottest on record. So I have an article that I want to share with you all. It's from Scientific America, and it breaks down the 5 climate themes that have gotten worse since Trump took office. And I just want to add on that this is far from just a Donald Trump problem. The Democrats and Obama were not helping to mitigate climate change either, since multinational corporations who emit a fifth of the world's carbon emissions got more powerful under Obama. We invaded more countries for oil under Obama. We opened the Arctic up to drilling. We increased the exploitation of fracking. And we became the world's #1 exporters of oil in the US under Obama. And we also sanctioned countries who didn't want to privatize their oil or other natural resources that get overexploited and contribute to climate change. So the Dems are not our saviors. Just because they acknowledge climate change, just like I said earlier, they have to take action to tackle the root cause, and that is to stop serving the oil and chemical industries, which they refuse to stop doing. So let's now dive into the article and look at the 5 climate themes that have increased since 2016. So number 1 is natural disasters. The article says that more than 3,000 Americans have died in natural catastrophes during the past 4 years. Most of them were victims of Hurricane Maria in 2017. And the massive Category 5 storm killed an estimated 2,975 people in Puerto Rico and forced thousands to flee the U.S. territory. The devastation continues to have ripple effects 3 years later. Tens of thousands of people still live under leaky blue tarps. The island's power supply, never reliable to begin with, has become far worse, and some parts of Puerto Rico were without power for a year. And that was the same year that Hurricane Harvey dumped 60 inches of rain on parts of Houston, becoming the wettest cyclone on record. Tens of thousands of homes were damaged, and about 70 people were killed. Harvey caused more than $100 billion in damage, making it one of the costliest disasters to strike the United States. There's also wildfires. Record wildfires have also burned across the West. The 2018 Camp Fire in California was the deadliest. It killed 85 people and destroyed more than 10,000 homes. It was fueled by drought, an outcome of climate change. This week, California continued to battle the second and third largest wildfires in the state's history. Officials have connected the fires to climate change. So it's absolutely devastating. You see that natural disasters lead to economic catastrophe. So if we don't tackle climate change now in a very efficient manner, not just, having like a few tweaks around the edges, while allowing things to go on as business as usual, as what Obama was offering, that's not going to solve things. And these natural disasters are going to persist, and people are going to continue to have their homes destroyed, and we're not going to receive much government help under this neoliberal system that we have. I mean, the US doesn't do much to solve the homelessness crisis that we have now, or to help people who are living paycheck to paycheck, which is about 80% of the entire country. Heat is the second theme that has increased, and the article says that the Trump years have been some of the hottest since record keeping began after the Civil War, according to NASA. After a record warm July, this year may break all-time annual heat record set in 2016. And the heat can lead to droughts, it can lead to the death of many plants, and it can destroy ecosystems. And we interact with this ecosystem. This is where our food comes from. So this can lead to all sorts of other problems like food shortages. Now, it's not all bad. The article mentions the third theme that has increased is public opinion. And the article says that polls show that voter concern about climate change has been growing for years, and that is not diminished as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. Concern among some voters has spiked during Trump's tenure. Before the virus, polling showed climate change was the second most important issue for Democratic primary voters, behind only healthcare. Now, I want to point out here that during the Obama years, climate change was continuing to exacerbate. And I think people had this idea in their head that we were tackling the issue efficiently, which we were not. And I recommend people to read The Green Shock Doctrine by the Global Justice Ecology Project, which details how things were not getting better under Obama. And thankfully with Trump, people are more aware, and they're more concerned about climate change since they know they have somebody that isn't doing anything about it, as opposed to having somebody who's pretending like he's doing something about it while things are continuing to get worse. So the fourth theme here is that the US is the US and everyone else. So the US and everyone else is wanting to tackle this issue. The article says that since Trump pledged to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement, which, by the way, doesn't do really enough, it just tells people, it just asks countries to try to reduce carbon emissions, not to reduce carbon emissions completely. World leaders have pressed him to rejoin, to take the issue seriously. Among them are German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Emmanuel Macron. Last year, Trump said Prince Charles spent 90 minutes talking to him about climate change, trying to convince him to take stronger action and to once again make the United States a world leader. In response, Trump said he wanted good climate change, but his administration has continued to roll back environmental safeguards meant to reduce emissions. In December, Macron said other governments, including China, Russia, and the European Union, would lead the world in reducing emissions. The years-long process of withdrawing from the Paris Agreement won't be done until November. Yesterday, Biden tweeted that if he wins the election, he would rejoin the pact on the first day of his presidency. So I just want to point out that even if Biden rejoins the Paris Agreement, that doesn't mean that carbon emissions will be reduced significantly. Biden said that he will reduce carbon emissions completely by 2035, which isn't fast enough. We have 10 years left until we reduce it completely, or else the effects of carbon emissions and climate warming is only going to be irreversible. And also, if Biden goes back on his Paris Agreement, we're still going to be invading other countries for oil, which he supports, by the way. He voted here. There's never been a war in Biden's life that he doesn't support. We're still going to be sanctioning Venezuela. We're still going to be sanctioning other countries that don't want to play ball and privatize their oil. So carbon emissions are not going to be reduced significantly under Biden. Just because he goes back to the Paris Climate Agreement, that is not enough. And then the fifth theme here is that climate hits Wall Street. This week, it was announced that ExxonMobil Corp would be dropped from the Dow Jones Industrial Average Stock Index. It's a significant departure, as Exxon was the longest tenured company on the Dow, having been listed for almost a century. It's also a reflection of how oil companies have taken a financial hit amid growing concerns about climate change and as a result of declining consumption due to the pandemic. So that's some more good news right there. The oil industry is now the new tobacco. More people now know that it is bad, and the future is in more carbon friendlier sources of energy. And the oil industry, they're now selling their assets, they're going into debt because they're losing investors. Trump and several Republicans, I think that they think that we can just keep bailing out the oil industry. But that's just not sustainable. No matter how many times they plan on bailing them out, the public demand and investing will go down, and they'll just keep crashing time after time. Bailout after bailout, they'll just keep crashing. So it'll be like denying that a dead body is a dead body and pretending that it's still alive. So all in all, I think it's great that public awareness is increasing. There is a big public push to reduce carbon emissions. But even if we reduce carbon emissions significantly, we still have oil leaks from fracking, which the Green New Deal doesn't ban, by the way. There will still be nuclear leaks. We'll still be throwing away household products with dangerous chemicals. We'll still have overfishing, deforestation, all of that and more will continue to destroy our planet. And eventually it will harm you. It's going to harm your health. It'll harm your health directly because you are part of this global ecosystem. And you consume air, water, and food. All of that comes from nature. So even though you live in your house and you feel like you're detached from nature, no, you're still interacting with nature. Your food still comes from nature. And if all of that gets contaminated, or if all that gets filled with all these harmful hormones as a result of chemical reactions from these harmful chemicals and metals that we're dumping into the ocean and into our forests, that's going to harm our health. So that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you guys so much. If you like this content, hit that subscribe button for more videos like this. Support independent media. Take care, everybody. Stay informed.